Greetings and welcome to Austin, Texas Gardening. If this is your first time watching the channel, welcome. Today, we're going to be doing a backyard garden tour, showcasing the many things that are growing in my backyard garden and orchard here in late April, early May 2024. For a little bit of context, I've been doing these garden tours for a few years now, and I've gotten to share the iterations of the many things that I've been growing, so this will be a good opportunity to see what grows well in this area. For the record, I am now in Zone 9A, which has been reclassified from Zone 8B, and so we get a lot of sun here in Austin. As I mentioned, it is springtime, and it's already pretty hot outside. I'm feeling the humidity today as we've finally gotten some rain. If this is your first time watching, my backyard is about 4,000 square feet, and so I have the opportunity to plant some peach trees, fig trees. I've got really a whole host of things back here: pineapples, blackberries, onions, carrots, and so I'm going to be talking about some of the herbs, vegetables, and fruits that I'm growing here in my backyard garden. So I've divided this video up into various video chapter timestamps. If there's something specific that you want to see, check out the chapter timestamps. But for now, we're going to start by talking about my backyard orchard. This is really my favorite feature of the things that I'm growing in my backyard. What I've got on screen here is a Texas Prince peach tree. This is a peach tree that I planted about 2.5 years ago when I first bought this home, and I've had a lot of success growing peach trees over the past couple of years. From last year's garden tours and peach tree video, I explained that we face a bunch of different challenges here in Central Texas. One of the main challenges that I've had an issue with is predators. So that would be like wasps and primarily sparrows coming to eat my peaches. Thankfully, this year I've invested some money in a scarecrow. I've got that little owl there in the background, and it looks like my peaches are doing excellent. This tree put off maybe 20 or 30 peaches last year, and right now the new issue that I'm having is an overabundance. This tree has so much fruit on it that it looks like I'm gonna have some broken branches here shortly. This branch here is weighed down, and I can see some of the wood on the back end splitting open from how many peaches are hanging off of this tree, and they're not really even mature yet. If I kind of hold up my hand for scale, you can see that these pieces of fruit are about halfway grown, and once again, it is late April, early May, so I'm not expecting to harvest until probably late May or June, but it has been really fun and fascinating to grow these fruit trees. This peach tree specifically, once again, is a Tex Prince peach tree, and I thought it was going to perform poorly this year. If you've seen some of the previous garden tours, you'll know that this tree actually flowered in the fall, which is not what they're supposed to do. It had flowers on it on and off throughout the whole winter, and once again, that's not supposed to happen. You want your trees to be dormant to get their chill hours in over the winter, and then in the spring to put out shoots and flowers. But it turns out that this tree's just doing really well, and there's a couple of reasons why I think that might be. One of my theories is this French drain that's right here in the background. So one of my videos that's performed the best on YouTube is how I installed this French drain, and it traps a lot of water next to these peach trees, and I'm predicting that these peach trees have good drainage from the clay soil that they're in. And I know that's kind of an oxymoron that clay soil might have good drainage, but what I just mean is that with this French drain right next to it, they are rarely flooded, and whatever overrun they have from the rain gets caught in the drain. And so what you're looking for on these peach trees, if you've recently planted peach trees or if you've had them on your property for some time and you're not sure whether they're doing well or not, what you're looking for, and I've said this in a couple of my other peach tree videos, you're looking for this green growth. So this new fresh growth, it means that you will have fruit in the years to come, stuff like this. So there's 3 types of wood that I've described in previous videos on these peach trees. This is what I call green wood, where it's a new fresh shoot that's grown this spring. You can have redwood, which is about the thickness of a pencil. The redwood is what your actual fruit grows on. So another good example of that would be like up here, where you have these clusters. That's actually not a great example. Right here, where you have these clusters. This is actually turning into just straight up a branch, and I'm sure will not yield fruit in the seasons to come. Once the redwood gets a little bit bigger than the thickness of a pencil, you wind up with just a branch, which greenwood and redwood can grow off of and produce more fruit. And so I fertilized these peach trees with an evenly balanced 13-13-13 fertilizer. I like them to have a good mixture of nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. The potassium helps them to put out fruit, and the nitrogen helps them to put out greenwood. And so I'm expecting that we'll get some more fruit in the seasons to come. And so you might be thinking, what is the deal with these fruit growing so close together? Like, how is this actually going to produce 3 peaches? That's not even a good example. Right there is the best example. There's probably 10 different pieces of fruit in that frame. And I think most of those will probably grow to maturity, but if you had seen this tree even just 3 weeks ago, it had so much fruit on it and has actually been dropping some of the fruit. And so this is a good and healthy thing for these fruit trees to do. You'll see that 2 obvious pieces of fruit which dropped here, but also you'll see kind of like this, looks kind of like dog poop or sand. Those are actually peaches. So like right there, that's a peach. And it just dropped a couple of weeks ago, and they die pretty quickly. And so one of the real hazards here, we have a dog. And I honestly need to pick these up because at this maturity level of fruit that's dropping, there's nothing really to worry about. My dog's not going to want to eat this. It's too bitter. But there's also no pit. But once these pieces of fruit get a little bit bigger, and once again, some of them are already pretty close, they're going to have pits in them. And you wouldn't want your beloved pet to choke on a peach pit or anything like that. But this is the tree that I'm most proud of. I'm very excited with its performance. I haven't actually individually counted the pieces of fruit, but I'm just ballparking like probably 40 pieces of fruit on this tree. Honestly, it has been a very cool spring. And so I'm excited to see where this goes. It's not the only peach tree on my property. Right now, I planted, 8 peach trees maybe 2.5 years ago. I have 6 of the original and 1 new one. And this peach tree is also doing really well. So it's got a lot of vertical growth, which isn't really what you're looking for most of the time when people are pruning their peach trees. What they would do with a tree like this, and if I back up for scale, that fence is about 6'2" maybe. It's gone well over the fence. This tree has to be at least 7.5 feet tall, and it's even got fruit up there on the upper branches. And so that's not really what you want. I had a peach tree at one of my old properties that was probably 12 feet tall. And while that was really interesting, and every time I had guests over, they would comment on it and talk about how interesting it was and how expensive it must have been, when in reality it was just a gift from my good friend Parker. You don't really want a peach tree that high because it just makes it hard to harvest the fruit. You kind of want to prune it so that it's lower to the ground, easier to harvest from, and consistently putting out fresh shoots, which this tree has no problem with. All of this here is greenwood all over the whole tree. Like, this is already turning red, but it is a new, what I would call greenwood shoot. And so I'm expecting tons of fruit on this next year. And even now, it's, again, difficult to see because it hasn't all blushed yet, but there's a peach, 3 peaches right there. There's another one. I think there's one right down there. Peaches. So these trees are doing great. And it's such an interesting opportunity to, share this hobby with my family and my daughter. My wife and I have a 2-year-old girl, and she loves coming out here and pointing out the fruit and vegetables and all the interesting things that are growing here in our backyard. And I'm excited as she gets older to get to share more of this hobby with her. It's just been really cool over the past couple of years. Kind of standing at a weird angle here because we've got all sorts of stuff in our backyard, like this swing set. And so over here on the western half of my yard, these peaches have been doing great. I've additionally planted a little baby peach tree over here in this corner, which a friend from our neighborhood sold to me. And it's just a sapling, but it's doing all right. There was a La Feliciana peach tree here in this spot 2.5 years ago, but it didn't make it. So one of the lessons I like to share is that part of the hobby of gardening is simply watching your plants die. And not all of your fruit trees are going to go on to success. I believe the peach tree that was in this hole died from root rot, from being waterlogged, from the dense clay soil that it was planted in. And sometimes that is a problem you'll face, but for every peach tree that's died, I don't know if that's right to say, I've actually got more living than dead peach trees. These 2 peach trees are doing great, so even the ones that we've lost, we will remember them, but we'll also be thankful for what we have today. And then over here on the eastern side of my yard, while I'm walking over here, I can comment, I recently made a video on wildflowers. I grow a whole bunch of bluebonnets in my backyard, and they've now gone to seed. So I'm actually going to circle back and talk about the bluebonnets at the end. I think that would be a good thing to just stay focused on the topic, which is fruit trees. Once again, we have another owl perched up here, acting as my scarecrow for a larger section of well-fruiting peach trees, and a little fig tree over there. It's doing just great. Those two peach trees we just took a look at were Texas Prince peach trees, and this one here is a Royal Zest 2 peach tree. Once again, it's been in my backyard for 2.5 years. You can tell just by looking at it how much green growth it's got on it. Ton of green growth, red wood, probably about 20 peaches on this tree. There's a handful down there at the bottom. They're starting to blush up here, and there. Once again, that's what I'm talking about when I say redwood. I hope the lighting is doing me justice on this. It doesn't look so great on my camera right now, but over here at these upper branches, once again, you can see how much they're bending over. That's not a good thing. Too much weight on these branches can break them. And so these clusters of 3, 4, 5 peach trees on here, or 3, 4, 5 peaches on here, it is an issue. I've got a total of 10 kind of hanging off the top here. And hoping this tree is okay. I've been noticing it's kind of bending over the past couple of weeks. I don't know if that's related to the weight of the fruit or if that is just an issue with the tree general. I may stake it down, but it used to kind of stand up more like this. And now I've noticed it's hanging over to the side, which once again doesn't bother me too much. Now that I'm standing back here, I really do think it's the weight of the fruit that is causing that. But over here on this side, you can tell there's so little growth over on the left side, and it's really hanging to the right. But that's okay. I think it's still doing pretty well. This is a fig tree, which I purchased from a nursery in Fredericksburg last August. And I put it in the ground, it went dormant, and it's finally come back. I have not had much success with fig trees at this property. This fig tree, I believe, is a prolific Osborne fig. It was from a rooted branch, which was pretty large by the time I got it. But yeah, it's putting out fruit this year. It's putting out new growth. I've had the most success with brown turkey fig trees. So my last property, I had a brown turkey fig tree, which I'm not going to film, but occasionally I'll visit some of my friends in my old neighborhood, walk past my old house, and see that my old brown turkey fig tree, which was maybe about 2 feet at the time, has grown to being about 4 feet. And I wish I could put it in a video, but I'm going to respect the new owners and not trespass on their property. But I don't have to, because I've got this fig tree right here. It's, once again, as I said, I think it's from a rooted branch. If I take a step back, you can see there's this branch that's kind of growing down here. I predict that at one time it was on the side of a tree, like so. And that's why you've got some of those weird angles going on. But this branch down here, I was thinking about pruning it off. I mean, it's got fruit on it, and so I don't really want to prune it off. This is kind of my sugar branch. My dog's name is Sugar, and so when these fig trees mature a little bit, I'm sure she's gonna try to chew them up. But for the time being, she's already taken a few nibbles on this tree. Hopefully she doesn't damage it any more than she already has. But I'm really happy with this tree. Once again, it's about 4 feet tall, and it's looking pretty good. So the trees we've looked at so far, these two right here and these two on the other side of my yard, are the two that are doing the best, that I'm really happy with. And then I have these two in the corner, which aren't doing so great. And there's a couple of different reasons for that. These are Royal Zest 2. Well, that's Royal Zest 2. That's a Rio Grande peach tree, if memory serves. And the reason that this one isn't doing so well, maybe a year ago at this point, we had a neighbor do some yard work for us and weed whacked our peach tree. And so it's been damaged and suffered from peach borers, but it's got greenwood on it. It's growing well. It's just that ever since it was damaged, this part of the tree has died. Like right about here, I'm thinking I need to prune it and just cut ties with what isn't growing. And then what's more, the red wood with these holes in it is classic leaf rot. About to get stung by a wasp out here. I meant root rot. I predict that because of these holes in the leaves, this tree is not draining well. This was an issue with a peach tree on the other side of my yard before I installed my French drain. And so I don't know if this peach tree is going to make it. We're going to do everything we can to prune it and keep it healthy. And then over here in the corner, this Rio Grande peach tree has always been kind of a dud. It's actually got fruit on it this year. There's 4 or 5 pieces of fruit right there, and I mean, it was a late bloomer to begin with. It has green wood now. I shouldn't call it a dud. From the last time I came out here, it did not have a lot of green wood on it, but now I can see it's actually got quite a bit. So don't let me talk bad about this tree. It's just been slow. It's been slower than the others. I've been expecting better performance, but for right now, I think all of these trees really, maybe with the exception of our La Feliciana that's dying right there, have been doing really great. It's been a lot of fun to grow these trees, and I've tried a whole bunch of different things at this point. I've tried to grow lemons, limes, grapefruit, all types of citrus, apples, and I've really only had success with stone fruit. I planted a plum tree at my friend's house maybe about a year ago or 2 years ago, and it's doing well. And so like apricots, peaches, plums are things that I can definitely recommend for Central Texas. There's probably a couple of different reasons for that. They're really hardy. They enjoy the really low quality dense clay soil that is so common here in the state. And other, especially citrus, like they just can't stand the winters we get. We've had very consistent freezing rain, snow, ice, hard freezes, things that citrus just doesn't do well with. I've seen people grow citrus in Austin before. I would just recommend against it. I personally just haven't had much success with it. But I think that while these fruit trees, these fruit trees are really cool, I'm also growing some other things that I want to get a chance to talk about. And this is my raised bed. I haven't had a ton of time to maintain this raised bed over the past several months. I work full-time, we've got a 2-year-old, a baby on the way, and I'm also a seminary student. And so I stay extremely busy at all times, and it leaves me an opportunity to mow the lawn, maybe do some light weeding, and just a short assessment of what I have growing here in my backyard. And so this is my raised bed. It's been pretty heavily neglected for some time. I'm going to take an opportunity to talk about this raised bed, but first I want to talk about these Hawaiian pineapples that I've been growing for several years now. My wife and I went to Hawaii 3 years ago, and we brought back these Hawaiian pineapple crowns, and they have seen better days. They were very perky and looking great about a year ago, but at this point, I brought these out of my garage. They were in my garage under a grow lamp for a year. What am I saying for a year? For 3 months, 4 or 5 months actually, from, let me think, like November to April. And we've just had a lot of late freezes. And so when they came out, they were actually looking pretty good, but I've noticed they have dropped a couple of their stalks, and I'm not sure how they're going to perform over the long run. I've recently purchased a product called Bang-Site, which is supposed to help these pineapples fruit, and I'm going to apply it to our pineapples and see if we can't get them to fruit here in the next couple of months, because I'm very tired of trying to grow these. Let me just say it clearly. You know, when I said the tree thing, like grow what grows well here, pineapples obviously don't grow well here. They're tropical plants. We get freezes. It's enough said. And so it's been an interesting challenge to try to grow them. And I mean, this thing is still alive. I'm not going to say it's dead. It isn't. But I'm hoping that this is the last season I'm attempting to grow these, because it's just too much work hauling these in and out of my garage. This pineapple probably weighs, I'm just ballparking it here, 150 pounds. It's extremely heavy because of the whiskey barrel that it's in. And that one over in the background in the 5-gallon bucket is still alive too. I'll have a comprehensive video on these if they ever grow to fruit, but until they do, it's just a project that I'm still working on. So moving on, the raised bed. This is seen more interesting days as well. In the past, I've grown cucumbers, tomatoes, carrots, and all sorts of different herbs, lettuce, cilantro, parsley. And right now, there's just not a lot going on here. I've got some cilantro, which has gone to seed. That's what all this stuff is that's overflowing out of the bed. All these little white flowers here are actually cilantro. And so when cilantro goes to seed, it bears coriander. And this is not ripe yet, but these little green balls will turn brown, and then that'll become coriander, which we can grind up into seasoning, or we can plant to grow more cilantro. And so I have had a lot of success growing things in this raised bed. For some information on this, the raised bed is 3 feet wide by 20 feet long. I made a video in the fall of 2021 explaining how I constructed this and filled it with soil. And if you go compare that video, the soil line in that video, to where it's at today, you can see I've got some shrinkage going on. All of that part, the space where the wood is rotting, for the record, that is yellow pine, or I should say it was yellow pine. Now it's aged yellow pine. And as the soil kind of compacts over time from erosion and just being rained on over and over, it might be in my interest to, I turn over the soil every spring, or every late winter, early spring. But at this point, I mean, the stuff that's doing well in here, I've got some blackberries. And so this big plant right there is a blackberry plant, and it's actually been pretty fruitful. All of these little buds on there are blackberries. There's probably 30 different blackberries on the plant. They put out these pink flowers, which look like this. And I don't know, well, actually I do know this is self-pollinating, so I only have one plant here. But it grows really well and has been here for probably 2.5 years. Again, this is like an OG certified plant, but it just hasn't yielded that much fruit until lately. And I've tried to propagate it. I've seen a couple of different ways you can propagate these. Most people do it by just burying the tip of a plant under the soil, and then it'll put out roots, and they'll just cut it and prop it. I've noticed that I took cuttings and used a rooting powder, and it's kind of hard to see, but this is actually its own separate plant right here. This is a third, this is a fourth, and these are really too close together. I'm not sure if they're growing off like a taproot or what's going on there, because I've got this one over in the corner, which I didn't actually plant. These little dead black things are the cuttings that I took and used rooting powder on, but they're not really doing much. I don't even know if they're alive. This one looks like it might be alive. It is definitely not. So like these plants that I've tried to root haven't done so well, but the plant seems to be propagating itself, and even at its size, it's yielded quite a bit of fruit. So I'm pleased with it. I've also got some carrots over here in this corner, and I grew a lot more carrots last year. I had a lot of success with carrots last spring. I just chose to plant different things this year, and some of my carrots came up and then died in a hard freeze, and so what's left is like this. And it's pretty cool. Like, it's definitely something. It's not the biggest carrot ever, so I'm gonna leave the other ones in the ground. Once again, I had more success with carrots in the past. I think the hard freeze this year really damaged a lot of my delicates. But one thing that does well, regardless of the temperature, is onions. So these are some green and red onions. You can just tell from what I've got there that this is doing great. And if I pull it up, look at that. Beautiful. Big old red onion. These grow great in deep freezes. Everything else being root vegetables, they're just secure underground. I've never had an issue growing these. And when they go to seed, they put off these pods. I've tried planting these to grow more onions and haven't really had a ton of success with it. But it's been really interesting to grow these. One of the few root vegetables that I've had good success with. I have not had the same success with potatoes, but this turned out good enough to eat. And so this raised bed is really cool. It cost me about $1,000 because of the way I sourced the soil to build this. But if you wanted to build something similar, I bet you could pull it off for $500. And so you're not really saving money doing this. You'd be saving money if you were planting in fertile soil on a lot that you owned. But it's been a really fun hobby to just learn how plants grow and get to grow them myself at home. And I'm not sure what I'm going to put in this. I could have done tomatoes this year. Once again, I just chose not to because I've probably pulled 10 all-nighters in the past month, just in terms of getting my coursework finished and dealing with my daughter and my family and work and the many different things that life has going on. And so I'm not really interested in spending extra time on my hobbies, except for days like today where the weather's great and I have the opportunity to, which is really the other thing. My neighbor has got this flag, which is kind of like my barometer for whether I can film today. I cannot film in the wind. So there's been many different days that I was like, man, I really want to make a garden tour today, but I can't because it's too windy and the audio will be destroyed. So this is a really great opportunity to show what I have going on in late spring. Once again, if you have any suggestions, things that you think grow well in this area that you'd like me to try, I'd be happy to give it a shot. At this point, I wanted to take a moment to talk about my bluebonnets. So one of the last videos I published was explaining my process for growing these wildflowers, and I'm not going to go into all of it right now. If you want to know the process, go back and watch my bluebonnet video that I just recently released. But I just wanted to show that my bluebonnets have gone to seed for sure at this point, and so they still look pretty, but all these seed pods here, each one of those pods has got probably 8 to 10 bluebonnet seeds in it that are going to seed next year's little wildflower meadow on my property. And so it's really fun to make these videos and just show the neat and interesting things that grow well in Central Texas. Once again, if you have any questions about something that I didn't have the chance to explain in my video, if you want to know anything about how much something costs that I didn't talk about, or just anything else, go ahead and leave a comment on my video. Let me know what you have a question about. If you have any suggestions, I'd love to review your feedback. And once again, thank you for watching an Austin, Texas gardening backyard garden tour.